Christian Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Rebels Keep by Douglas Bond, narrated by Shaun Grindell. By small, accomplishing great things by things deemed weak, subverting worldly strong. John Milton, Paradise Lost, Book 12, 1674. 1. Midnight Awakening, June 3rd, 1679. Suffering for truth's sake is fortitude to highest victory, and to the faithful, death the gate of life. John Milton, Paradise Lost, Book 12. Angus MacKeith lay on the chaff-filled contours of his bed, vigorously working the muscles of his face in a series of silent contortions. Opening his mouth and eyes as wide as he could, then clamping shut his mouth and squinting his eyes tightly closed, he stretched the muscles of his forehead and cheeks until his skin felt like it would split apart. A hint of silvery moonlight filtered through the narrow window of his corner in the croft, and by it Angus could just make out the shadowy undersides of the rafters and heather thatch of the roof. A rustling noise came from up there, and he watched the moonlight glint on a stray bit of falling thatch, and on a puff of dust drifting down from the roof. His mother hated those rats that persistently scratched and gnawed above them, and no amount of determination on his family's part could get rid of the vermin. There had been one time when the rats left, 13 years ago, when King Charles' commander, Deal, burned their Galloway croft to the ground. The rats left then. So did Angus's family, fleeing for their lives north to the lonely moors of Ayrshire, near the village of New Milnes, where they now lived. Angus listened to the steady breathing coming from where his mother and father slept nearby, and he thought he heard his sister Jenny's calm breath, but he could never quite tell with Jenny. Last night, when he desperately needed sleep, he could not sleep, he remembered ruefully. Tonight, when he needed to stay awake, he could barely keep his eyes open. Things were like that sometimes, he thought with a sigh, and returned to his contortions. This time he tried twisting his lips at grotesque angles, and then holding them until his lips felt like they might tear. Sweat broke out on his forehead. Was that tearing a wee bit of what a condemned prisoner felt? When the king's executioner in Glasgow laid him out on the rack and stretched until every creaking joint popped under the strain. With a shudder, he once again returned to his face-twisting contortions. Moments later, he felt creeping over him that familiar expanding in his throat and mouth. He yawned, a great stretching yawn, complete with a gleeking in the back of his throat. Part of him just wanted to give up, roll over and go to sleep. A muscle in his cheek began an involuntary twitching, and he let his face relax, not all the way, and just for a moment. Tap, tap. Angus lay still. Through the oblivion of sleep, his breath now came in steady in-and-out draws. Tap, tap, tap. The last tap had that insistent tone that even slumber could not fully ignore. Angus's eyes popped open, and like a flood he remembered all. His older brother Duncan had ordered him that afternoon to not let himself go to sleep, and to stand ready and alert until midnight. He would say no more. But it was clear from his brother's face that this was no childhood game. Duncan, 11 years older than Angus, was a grown man with a wife and child. He was too old now for this to be some mere adventure for its own sake. What's more, Angus had seen in Duncan's steady gaze that whatever the mission was, his brother was dead earnest about it. As silently as he could manage, Angus rolled onto his side and put his face to the narrow bit of rippled glass at the window. On the other side of the glass, he could just make out, staring fiercely back at him, his brother's eyes, set deeply beneath a brow furrowed by irritation. Duncan held his dirk, its tip poised at the window for one last try at rousing his younger brother. With his mouth set in a thin line, and a fixed, "Why did I plan to bring you along?" look in his eyes, Duncan jerked his head sideways toward the door. Angus silently wrapped his wool plaid around his shoulders, gathered his bow, and crept out of the croft. "Oh, then, Angus," said Duncan, halting in the shadows moments later, when they had left the 3 MacKeith crofts far enough behind them not to be heard. "Ye slept?"
Sample complete. Ready to continue?